I want to pick up a few comments about the story of the 77-year-old prisoner who merited release and was denied that release, was pulled back into prison because the prison Serco people couldn't find a suitable monitor for her ankle or for her wrist. And James Pilgrim says, thank you for raising this issue, which clearly and understandably triggered some negative responses, some negative emotions from some of your audience. However, your point, compassion, is really the main issue. And I raise my hat to you, sir. We need more compassion in these troubled times. And before the various road users start to give negative replies, think on this. I'm approaching 82 years, and for over 30 years, I travelled 50,000 miles each year on the UK road, so I understand the frustrations. Yeah. Miss Flight says, and references a point where I said her punishment should fit the crime. Her punishment should fit her, not the crime. I was quoting Gilbert and Sullivan, of course. Good grief, or rather I was misquoting Gilbert and Sullivan. Good grief, am I hearing correctly? Upon that sentiment, Rafe Clark, 101, when jailed for indecent assault on multi-children, should have been let off with a slap on the wrist, perhaps. No, I think you missed the point. This lady was found guilty. She was sent to prison according to the decision of the court, and now she merits release according to the principles laid down in the system. She doesn't get release because the system isn't able to provide it, because the system is for some reason incompetent. Now, imprisoning somebody solely because the state lacks the tools or the mechanisms to set them free, despite their eligibility for release, is fundamentally unjust for, I think, 6 reasons. I'm going to go through them because I think it's important to establish this. 1, it violates the principles of justice. And if you violate the principles of justice in one small way, then you violate the principle of justice in a big way. Justice demands that individuals are only deprived of their liberty when they have committed a crime and are lawfully sentenced. If they have fulfilled their punishment or proven they no longer pose a threat, continued incarceration violates the core principle of proportionality. 2, it's a breach of human rights, and detaining someone beyond their lawful term infringes on their right to liberties enshrined in international human rights frameworks such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 9, and the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 5. Number 3. When someone has earned their release, keeping them imprisoned effectively punishes them for the state's failure to act competently or efficiently, an injustice that shifts the burden of institutional stupidity, inadequacy, incompetence onto the individual. Number 4. This is an erosion of the rule of law. The rule of law relies on predictable and fair process, a fair application of legal principles, and ignoring the conditions for someone's release undermines public trust in legal systems and signals that the government power may override fairness and legality at its whim. And that is a fundamental failing that is exposed here. It tells us that we are not in a fair, democratic and just society. We are in a society that is ruled by thugs who can or cannot be bothered to do their job. And that is not a good society. If that is society we are entering, if that is the form of life that Britain offers, it is not a life worth having. It is a life of servitude. It is a life of fear where you doff your cap because you don't dare say anything. I've lived in one of those societies. I lived in Russia, and I minded my P's and Q's because I knew that if I said the wrong thing, I would find myself in prison. And I came back to the UK expecting something better. And what I see is this: abuse of justice. Number 5. Have I got up to number 5? Yes, I have. Number 5. The state has a duty. This is about moral responsibility. The state has a duty to ensure mechanisms exist for rehabilitating and reintegrating individuals in society, and failure to provide those mechanisms reflects a neglect of the duty of the state and should not result in the individual's continued suffering. This is about the state's failure, not her failure. And number 6, prolonged imprisonment when unwarranted often harms rehabilitation efforts, increases the cost to taxpayers, and fosters resentment or distrust in the legal system. This action prioritizes bureaucratic failures and rewards the bureaucratic failing of the state and the people tasked with looking after the prisons and the prisoners, and it overrides individual dignity and fairness, betraying the foundational tenets of justice in any democratic society. This is something that we should be standing on the rooftops screaming about. It seems to be an issue about one individual. It's not. This is an issue about this is an issue that we should be militant about, really. I was going to say we should lay down in the street and protest, but that's, of course, what got her into trouble in the first place. It is wrong. This is a moral issue. This isn't a legal issue. I'd love to know your opinion on this, but it's not about what she did. She's been punished for that, and she now merits freedom. Monitored freedom, but freedom nevertheless. That is the system in our country, and she isn't being given that because her leg's the wrong size or her arm's the wrong size. That's outrageous.